So, hello everybody, this is Bhante Joe here, and I'm just here at Endagala, which is a place recorded a bunch of times before in the forest, and so I thought to record a short awada for the internet, and so I thought that maybe you could start with a little bit of meditation, so maybe you can lean forward a little bit and arch the spine, and look about 3 feet in front, and close our eyes. And can focus in on the breath, can know when it's coming in, and know when it's going out. If one breathes in a long breath, can just know I'm breathing in a long breath. And if one breathes in a short breath, can just know I'm breathing in a short breath. And can focus in on the breath at the tip of the nose. And if notice any patterns of tension or tightness around the nose, around the face, can just let those relax. And can relax any patterns of tension around the cheeks, around the chin. And can practice breathing in and out from this area at the tip of the nose. And when breathing in and out from the tip of the nose, it can be helpful to change one's perception of the breath so that it's not just air that one is pulling in and out of the lungs, but it's a kind of energy that's all around and coursing through one's body. And it's possible to pull it into and out of the tip of the nose from every direction. So on the in-breath, one can think whole body. On the out-breath, one can think whole body. Pulling breath energy in and out from every direction. So when breathing in and out, one can imagine breath energy coming in with the in-breath, out with the out-breath, from every direction. And before we finish meditating, can spread thoughts of goodwill, wishing may all beings all around everywhere be happy and at ease. May they put in place the causes necessary to be happy and at ease. And we can make the mind infinite, can make it unbounded, all the way to the ends of the universe and beyond, in every dimension. May all beings all around everywhere be happy and at ease. And can open our eyes and do a short reflection on the Dhamma. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Saṅghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Saṅghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Saṅghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. So, hope that everybody's having a great day, wherever it might be. And yeah, it's been a nice day here in Sri Lanka. There's been lots of sun. There's kind of a bunch of rain just recently. And so, yeah, it's a nice place here, kind of elevated and up, and good breeze. And so, yeah, been one of the interesting things is that actually out here, there's in the forest, there's always kind of something you can, there's a lot of beauty, it's kind of, a nice breeze, there's kind of, a nice place to sit, all these various things. But there's also always an element where a person can be afraid. So there's actually big snakes that live in the forest, there's kind of cobras, and this is not to make people afraid. But there are these dangers that one could be aware of, reasonably aware of, and they can be large, like 6 feet or 5 feet. They're quite big, and there's ticks, and there's elephants, and these various creatures that live here. And there's always a possibility when one steps into the forest that one might encounter one of these snakes, or might encounter an elephant, or might encounter these various things. So actually on a couple of the walks, actually it was just a couple of days ago, I was walking and I heard this rustle in the bushes, and then I saw this huge, maybe, I think it was a cobra, and it was maybe 5 feet or something, and it was running, not running, but going quickly, and it kind of ducked down and went into this hole. And the hole was pretty small, and it disappeared into this hole. And didn't see it after that. And so these kind of animals are here in the forest. And so this is one of the things that one learns about in the forest. Traditionally, when monks go out into the forest, they go to the forest, and one of the contemplations that they think about, especially recommended in the suttas, is this kind of contemplation of death, which is that, there's a lot of different things that could cause me to die. Kind of many things. I could be bitten by a snake. I could run into an elephant. I could trip and fall and, maybe fall off a rock or something like that. And all these various ways are ways that I could die. That's the way that it would be the end of my life. And so reflecting in this way, it's supposed to give rise for a monk, to give rise to kind of heedfulness. Like, well, that being the case, what am I really going to be spending my time on? So when a monk does this, a monk or a lay person kind of refocuses their mind tends to focus less on kind of the acquisitions of life. This kind of person thinks, any time could be my time. Then they try to find something that will last for them, longer than kind of a life does. And so in this case, this is their practice of the Dhamma. The kind of momentum that a person builds in their Dhamma practice is something that makes them happy now, and its momentum actually carries on beyond life. So what we actually do when we do this kind of reflection on death is we generate heedfulness for one thing. But another thing that we do is we focus our mind on something that's more secure than life. Because this is one of the things that the Buddha talks about, this kind of intoxication with life. It's possible for people to go around thinking they're never going to die. And kind of sometimes remember growing up in the West and would sometimes, basically never be thinking about kind of getting old or, sick or dying or various things. Kind of you wouldn't see that too often on TV, although it's happening all the time. And so what this can give rise to is two things. It can give rise to a type of heedlessness, the kind of spending one's time on things that aren't going to provide one a safe refuge. But it can also give rise to a type of fear, because one of the things that people fear the most when the time for death comes is to be separated from all these various things that they put their weight on. To be separated from their status, to be separated from their family, to be separated from their wealth, to be separated from their job, and then to have to head to a kind of uncertain destination, taking none of these things along. So when a person doesn't have this reflection on death, that, I could pass away, I'm not eternal, then these things come to the fore, making money, all these various things. But when a person does have this reflection, these things fall away. One starts to look for a more secure refuge. One of the benefits of looking for this more secure refuge, looking for a refuge in Dhamma, is that it can reduce actually one's fear of death. So there are these kind of various things that can cause a person to pass away. Many. I remember, there used to be a song that I listened to when I was young, and it said, there's like 6 million ways a person can die. So there's so many different ways. And one of the things that can happen when one doesn't reflect on this wisely, doesn't reflect on it frequently, is that a kind of fear can arise of death. Now, this kind of element of fear, it can have two senses to it. There is an element of fear that's beneficial. I kind of go out into the forest, notice a whole bunch of really tall grass in a marshy area, then that's, not the best place to walk. So, there's this element of fear that warns people that something is dangerous. But there's also this element of fear that's what you might call a kilesa. In other words, it's this element of fear that's a defilement. There's an element of fear that basically just feeds on itself and keeps growing and creates delusions about a possibility for meeting one's death or meeting with suffering or meeting with disaster. Creates this possibility that isn't really there. It kind of creates this kind of fantasy doomsday scenario that maybe not be there. Now again, this isn't something that is to say that one shouldn't be afraid or shouldn't be cautious at all. But these two elements of fear can come together, and they can be difficult to separate. So when a person learns to contemplate death frequently, to contemplate their own mortality frequently, they become less attached to life. It's kind of not less attached to life in a heedless way, but less attached like, this is my life and everything around it, I must have to, give me a sense of happiness, to give me a sense of ease, so that basically the imminent things, the material things in one's life are one's only source of refuge. So when one learns to generate this kind of contemplation of death frequently, when one learns to develop a refuge in the Dhamma, it helps one to step back and evaluate a situation. Okay, wait a minute, is this fear that I have right now reasonable or is it unreasonable? Is this fear that I have something that I should listen to or something that I should not listen to? So, although there's dangers going into the forest, definitely there is still, monks go there anyway because there's a reasonable chance that they won't be dying, although they may. It's not like a 90% chance they're going to go in there and die. And the benefits of going into the forest outweigh that. So recently now on the news, I kind of, as a monk, sometimes you don't watch much news at all, but sometimes kind of big news cases, come to your attention, obviously, if they're big enough. And right now there's this kind of a lot of thought about the coronavirus, I guess. And, of course, this is one of those things like going into the forest that, there may be obviously genuine reasons to be afraid, kind of, genuine warning signs, especially if there's health professionals that, have to watch out for this thing. Then they do their job and maybe have studied past pandemics, these various things. But it was interesting. I remember as a young man, I used to study business and used to study economics. And there can be this element of kind of group behavior where group behavior can feed on itself. So it can kind of amplify and amplify and amplify. There was this kind of story of Tony Robbins, actually, kind of tell these stories from before I ordained. And he was kind of coaching this group, this singing group, and he kept trying to get them more and more excited. He's like, okay, get more excited. And then, they kind of, go, yeah, okay, get more excited, step it up a notch. And eventually they got to a point where to get more excited, they had to kind of like high five each other, kind of, get involved with each other. And then that amplified the excitement. And so in a similar way, when one studies these stock market kind of booms and busts, sometimes these stock market booms in certain eras. I mean, probably most people remember the dot-com boom, but there have been ones where it's just like all that everybody talks about is the kind of stock market, company. There was one called the South Sea Company, and just kind of took over. There was this kind of tulip bulb bubble where tulip bulbs were going for these outlandish prices in Holland at one point. And the funny thing about this was it was kind of this fed by this kind of mass, one person's emotion would feed another, would feed another, would feed another. Now, no question that, say, the internet is a valuable thing. It's actually changed our lives, probably everybody's life. I mean, this video is being recorded on a phone and then uploaded to the internet, which is how people can view it. So it's definitely been a game changer. But it turned out that was a bubble, that people's ideas of just how important it would be, just how pervasive it would be, didn't turn out to be entirely accurate, although there was an element of accuracy to them. And so in the same way with these kind of, flus or bugs or germs, I mean, it's not certain. Certainly one wants to take precaution, but in one's meditation practice, one also wants to learn to try to separate the fear that's reasonable from the fear that's unreasonable. So if one finds oneself, say, not wanting to go to the grocery store or afraid to go to the movies or something like this, when it's not like the plague, it may be something that one might consider as a type of fear that may be a defilement. Now, it's kind of up to the individual to think about that themselves. But one of the things that one finds when one confronts fear, when one overcomes fears, one can see just how oppressive this second type of fear is. This second type of fear which conjures scenarios in one's mind so that basically the outlook of everything just seems completely horrible. This type of fear that kind of amplifies scenarios in one's mind so that a very small thing like a snowball going down a hill keeps rolling till it becomes this massive boulder. And eventually, maybe a person has a cough or something and they, get worried, really worried that they're going to die or they have coronavirus. Actually, I just got sick a few days ago and I don't think it was coronavirus. But in any event, there is definitely going to be an element to this that's reasonable, but also an element to it that's maybe going to be fear-based and kilesa-based. So when one learns to take their refuge in the Dhamma, one learns to have the Buddha's teachings as their central theme, then what this can help to do is to give one a refuge that lasts beyond life. When one learns to contemplate death frequently, I could die at any moment. Actually I could possibly get the coronavirus. I could be hit by a car. There's a lot of things, many ways that a person can die. Any of these things could happen. Then it helps to separate one's mind from one's attachment to life and to turn it towards things that are really meaningful. And with all this, if one practices this frequently, then this helps to separate one from these two types of fear. The type of fear that's reasonable, okay, well, maybe I won't, fly to the center of the coronavirus epidemic and live there. But it helps to separate it as well from the type of fear that may be unreasonable. Oh, I've got a small cough. Could this be the end of my life? It may be coronavirus, maybe not. Or, or if somebody maybe doesn't want to go to a shopping center or something like that, can separate these things. And once these types of fear are separated, one can lose a huge burden on one's mind. Because a lot of the suffering that comes from fear can just be just a mirage that the mind has conjured up to make one afraid. And this type of fear can be amplified when various people kind of come together to amplify it. And not to say again that there's nothing to be afraid of in certain situations, but there can be this element of amplification. And so when we practice in this way, we can gain a freedom from this second type of fear, the freedom from this kind of kilesa fear, the freedom from this defilement fear, this freedom from this fear that's unreasonable, that conjures up these images in our mind, and that can actually become even more oppressive than the thing that one is afraid of in the first place. So contemplating our own death in this way, contemplating our practice in this way, finding a refuge in the Dhamma in this way, and then learning to separate these types of fear and go against the fear, fight the fear, one learns to see the fear for what it really is, which is often just a mirage, often just something that's conjured up. And when that happens, then one can gain a freedom from it. Just like a person who's trusts one's friend or so, and they find their friend is often lying to them, and then eventually they don't trust them anymore. They don't have to worry about what they say anymore. In the same way, when one learns to separate these types of fear, the worry that comes from this second type can fall away, and one can feel more at ease. One can feel more at ease in doing good. One can feel more at ease with a refuge in the Dhamma. One can feel more at ease finding freedom from this second type of fear, from this kilesa type of fear. So these are some of the benefits of practicing mindfulness of death and of looking for a refuge in the Buddha's teachings. Okay, so leave that for reflection, and hope that everybody has a great day, and wishing you all the best till next time.